My son left a note on my hospital bed that read, "You're a burden we can't afford. The house is sold. Enjoy your new home at Pinewood Manor." On the back of that note, I wrote just 3 words. And when he read them, 67 missed calls lit up my phone screen, but by then it was far too late for apologies. Before I tell you how I brought my own ungrateful son to his knees, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to teach someone a lesson they would never forget. The Alberta wind in January does not care if you have just spent 6 hours in surgery getting a pacemaker installed. It cuts through hospital gowns and settles in your bones like a permanent guest. I was sitting in a wheelchair in the discharge area of Foothills Medical Center in Calgary, waiting for my ride home. I am Arthur Blackwood. I am 72 years old. I spent 40 years building one of the most successful engineering consulting firms in Western Canada. I designed bridges that span the Bow River. I designed the foundation systems for half the office towers downtown. I am not a man who waits for anything. But that afternoon, I waited. I waited for 2 hours in that cold lobby while nurses kept asking if someone was coming to pick me up. I called my son Trevor 17 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. His wife Vanessa did not answer either. I sat there in my thin hospital gown with a fresh incision in my chest, watching the snow pile up outside the automatic doors, and I felt something I had not felt in decades. I felt abandoned. Finally, a taxi pulled up. The driver helped me into the back seat because my arms were too weak to pull myself in. The fare to my home in Mount Royal was $63. I did not have my wallet. It was at home in the drawer where I always kept it. The driver looked at me with pity and said he would wait while I went inside to get cash. I thanked him and shuffled up the walkway to my front door. The walkway had not been shoveled. That was strange. Trevor had promised to take care of the house while I was in the hospital. He and Vanessa had been staying there for the past week, supposedly to keep an eye on things. I reached the door and pulled out my key. It did not fit. I tried again, thinking maybe my hands were shaking too much from the cold, but it was not my hands. The lock had been changed. I pressed the doorbell. I could hear it chime inside, the same 3-note melody that my late wife Margaret had picked out 20 years ago. I waited. Nothing happened. I pressed it again, and then I started knocking on the wood with my fist. My chest screamed in protest. The incision felt like it was tearing open. "Trevor," I shouted. My voice was weak from the anesthesia. "Open the door. It is freezing out here." I saw movement behind the frosted glass panel beside the door. Someone was watching me. A moment later, I heard the deadbolt slide back, but the door only opened a crack, catching on the security chain I had installed myself 15 years ago. My daughter-in-law Vanessa peered out through the gap. She was 34 years old and wearing a cashmere sweater that I recognized as a gift I had given her last Christmas. Her face was perfectly made up, but her eyes were cold, colder than the wind biting at my neck. "Arthur," she said. Her tone was flat, impatient, like I was a door-to-door salesman interrupting her afternoon. "What are you doing here? I thought you were staying at the hospital another night." I stared at her incredulously. "The hospital discharged me 3 hours ago, Vanessa. I have been calling Trevor all afternoon. Why are the locks changed? Let me in. I need to sit down. I need my medication." She did not move to undo the chain. In fact, she leaned her weight against the door, as if to make sure I could not push my way in. "You cannot come in," she said simply. "We have company." "Company?" I repeated. I was shivering so hard my teeth were chattering. "Vanessa, this is my house. I just had heart surgery. Open this door before I collapse on my own porch." "It is not your house anymore, Arthur," she said. Her voice was so casual it was terrifying. "We talked about this before the surgery. You signed the papers, remember?" I gripped the doorframe to keep from falling. I had signed papers, yes, before the surgery, when the doctors told me there was a chance I might not wake up. Trevor had brought a stack of documents to my hospital bed. He said they were just precautionary measures. Power of attorney, in case of emergency. Authorization for medical decisions. I trusted him. He was my only son. I thought he was protecting me. "I never signed anything giving away my house," I said, my voice dropping to a growl. "You gave Trevor power of attorney," Vanessa said, smirking slightly. "That covers financial decisions. The market is hot right now, Arthur. We found a buyer who is paying cash. The closing is tomorrow. You would just be in the way." The taxi driver honked his horn behind me. He was still waiting for his fare. I turned and waved at him weakly, then turned back to Vanessa. "Please," I said. I hated myself for begging, but my chest was on fire and my legs were giving out. "Just let me get my wallet. I need to pay the cab driver. Then I will go. I promise." Vanessa looked at me. She looked at her father-in-law, a man who had paid for her wedding, who had given them the down payment for their first condo, who had hired Trevor straight out of university and trained him personally. She looked at me, shivering and broken. "Wait here," she said. She closed the door. I thought she was getting my wallet. I thought maybe there was a shred of decency left in her. I stood there trying to keep my balance, waiting for the door to open again. Instead, a window on the second floor slid open. Trevor's face appeared. He was 38 years old, with the same jawline I saw in the mirror every morning, but his eyes were not mine. His eyes were calculating and cruel. "Hey, Dad," he called down. "Glad you made it through surgery." He tossed something out the window. It tumbled through the air and landed in the snow at my feet with a thud. "There is your wallet, and your clothes are in the garage. We boxed everything up for you." I looked down at my wallet lying in the snow. Then I looked up at my son. "Trevor," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done years ago," he said. "You've been holding us back, Dad. Sitting on this house like a dragon on a pile of gold. Mom has been dead for 5 years. You do not need a 7-bedroom mansion. We do. We have plans." I bent down to pick up my wallet. The movement sent a sharp pain through my chest that nearly knocked me unconscious. When I straightened up, Trevor had disappeared from the window. A moment later, Vanessa opened the front door just wide enough to shove a yellow sticky note through the gap. "Read it," she said. "Then get off our property before we call the police for trespassing." She slammed the door. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I stood there alone. The taxi driver honked again, more insistent now. I looked at the yellow note. In Vanessa's handwriting, it said, "You're a burden we can't afford. The house is sold. Enjoy your new home at Pinewood Manor." Pinewood Manor. I knew that place. It was a government-subsidized care facility on the outskirts of the city, a warehouse for the dying, a place where they parked old people and waited for them to stop breathing. They were not just selling my house. They were throwing me away. I should have cried. A normal father would have cried. But I did not cry. The tears froze before they could form. Instead, something inside me clicked into place. It was the part of me that had survived the oil crash of 1986. The part of me that had rebuilt my company from nothing after my partner embezzled everything in 1994. The part of me that had designed emergency structural repairs for buildings during the Calgary flood of 2013 while standing in waist-deep water. I bent down and picked up my wallet from the snow. I opened it. My credit cards were gone. My bank cards were gone. All that remained was my driver's license and a single $20 bill that had been tucked behind my library card. I looked at the house. My house. The house where I had raised my son. The house where I had held my wife's hand as she took her last breath. The Christmas lights were still hanging from the eaves, the ones I had put up 6 weeks ago. They were not lit. They had not bothered to plug them in. I walked to the garage. The side door was unlocked. Inside, stacked against the wall, were 4 cardboard boxes. My entire life, reduced to cardboard. I opened the top box. It contained clothes, but not my good suits. Just old sweaters and worn trousers. They had kept everything valuable. I closed the box and stepped back outside. The taxi was still waiting. I trudged down the driveway, my hospital slippers soaking through in the snow. "Here," I said to the driver, handing him the 20. "This is all I have. I am sorry." He looked at the bill, then looked at me. He saw the hospital bracelet on my wrist. He saw the fresh surgical tape peeking out from under my gown. He saw the tears frozen on my cheeks. "Get in," he said quietly. "I will take you wherever you need to go. Pay me when you can." I climbed into the back seat and gave him an address. Not a hotel, not a shelter. I gave him the address of the one person in Calgary who I knew would help me without asking questions. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back at my house one last time. The lights were on in the living room now. I could see silhouettes moving behind the curtains. They were probably celebrating. They probably thought they had won. They had no idea what they had just started. The taxi dropped me off in front of a modest bungalow in Bridgeland. The snow had been freshly shoveled. The walkway was lined with solar lights. Everything about this house said someone who cares lives here. I knocked on the door and waited. A moment later, it swung open, and Christine Whitfield stood there in a flannel shirt and reading glasses, her silver hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Christine is the daughter of my first business partner, a man who died in a construction accident 30 years ago. I paid for her education. I helped her get her first job at a law firm downtown. Now she ran her own practice, specializing in estate litigation, and she owed me nothing except the loyalty that comes from genuine gratitude. "Arthur," she said, her eyes going wide. She took in my hospital gown, my soaked slippers, my pale face. She did not ask questions. She grabbed my arm and pulled me inside. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to the couch near the fireplace. "I will make tea. Then you are going to tell me everything." An hour later, I had told her everything. The surgery, the power of attorney, the changed locks, the boxes in the garage, the note about Pinewood Manor. Christine listened without interrupting. Her expression grew darker with every sentence. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop and started typing. "Give me a minute," she said. "I am pulling up the land title records. If they are really selling the house tomorrow, there has to be a paper trail." I watched her face as she scrolled through the records. The blue light from the screen made her look like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. "Found it," she whispered. Her voice was ice cold. "Oh, Arthur, that clever little witch." "What did you find?" I asked, leaning forward despite the pain in my chest. She turned the monitor so I could see. It was a digital copy of a transfer document filed 3 days ago. The header read, "Transfer of land." "He did not just list the house for sale," Christine explained, pointing at the screen. "He transferred it. He used the power of attorney to register a transfer of the property from Arthur Blackwood to Trevor Blackwood for the sum of $1. He put the house in his name while you were unconscious on the operating table." I stared at the screen. There it was. My signature, forged by my own son. "This is fraud," Christine said, standing up and pacing the room. "This is clear self-dealing. A power of attorney has a fiduciary duty to act in the principal's best interest. Transferring a $3.8 million property to yourself for $1 while the principal is in surgery is textbook breach of duty. We can file an emergency application tomorrow morning. We can freeze the sale." She reached for her phone, ready to start making calls. "Wait," I said, holding up my hand. She looked at me confused. "Arthur, did you hear me? We can stop this." "I know," I said, "but I do not want to stop it. Not yet." Christine sat back down slowly. She knew me well enough to recognize when I was thinking strategically. "What do you mean?" she asked. I reached into my hospital gown and pulled out the crumpled yellow note. I smoothed it on my knee and read it again. "You're a burden we can't afford. If we stop them now," I said, "it is a civil dispute. Trevor can claim he was confused. He can claim he thought he was doing what I wanted. A judge might just void the transfer and slap his wrist. But if they go through with the sale tomorrow," I continued, "if Trevor stands in that closing room and signs the final documents claiming he is the legal owner, and if he takes that money—" Christine's eyes widened as she caught my meaning. "Grand theft," she whispered. "Fraud. Elder financial abuse. If the value is over $5,000, which it definitely is, he is looking at a criminal conviction, mandatory prison time." I looked out the window at the dark Calgary skyline. I could see the glow of downtown in the distance, the towers I had helped build. "Trevor thinks I am a weak old man," I said. "He thinks I am a burden. Let him find out what kind of burden I really am." Christine nodded slowly. She picked up her phone, but instead of calling the civil clerk, she dialed a different number. "Detective Morrison," she said into the receiver. "This is Christine Whitfield. I have a case for you. It involves major fraud against a senior citizen, and you are going to want to be there when we spring the trap." She listened for a moment, then covered the mouthpiece. "He wants to know if the victim is willing to testify." I stood up, buttoning the cardigan Christine had given me. "Tell him the victim is ready," I said, "and tell him to bring handcuffs." The next morning, I sat in the back of Christine's car outside the offices of Henderson and Associates Real Estate Law on 17th Avenue. The sun was bright, but the temperature was -20. My breath fogged the window as I watched the entrance. At 9:47, Trevor's BMW pulled into the parking lot. He got out, looking like a man about to receive a lottery check. He was wearing a suit I had bought him for his 30th birthday, a charcoal Armani that still fit him perfectly. Vanessa emerged from the passenger side in heels and a designer coat, her hair freshly styled. They walked toward the building laughing about something. They looked happy. They looked victorious. I felt nothing but cold determination. "They think the buyers are already inside," Christine said from the driver's seat. "A young couple. Tech workers from Vancouver who want to relocate. They offered cash, closing in 48 hours. I nodded. That matches what the receptionist told me when I called yesterday pretending to be a paralegal confirming details. "They do not know," I said quietly, "that the buyers pulled out this morning." Christine smiled grimly. "They do not know a lot of things." We waited 20 minutes. Then Christine's phone buzzed. A text from Detective Morrison. "We're in position. Proceed when ready." I opened the car door and stepped out into the cold. The walk from the parking lot to the building entrance felt like the longest journey of my life. Each step sent a dull ache through my chest, where the pacemaker sat like a tiny mechanical heart beneath my skin. But I did not slow down. I had somewhere to be. The receptionist looked up as I pushed through the glass doors. She was young, maybe 25, with a professional smile that faltered slightly when she saw my appearance. I had not shaved in 3 days. My clothes were borrowed. I looked like exactly what Trevor had tried to make me, a homeless old man with nowhere to go. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked uncertainly. "I am here for the Blackwood closing," I said. "Conference room B." She checked her computer screen. "I am sorry, but that meeting is private. Family members only." "I am family," I said. "I am Arthur Blackwood, the man whose house they are selling." Her eyes went wide. She reached for the phone, probably to call security, but I was already walking past her desk toward the hallway. I had been to this office before. I knew exactly where conference room B was located. I pushed open the door without knocking. The room went silent. Trevor was sitting at the head of a long mahogany table, papers spread out before him. Vanessa sat to his right, her pen poised over a signature line. Across from them sat a lawyer I did not recognize, an older man with glasses and a nervous expression. There were no buyers. The chairs on that side of the table were empty. Trevor's face went through several transformations in the span of 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, then fear. "Dad," he stammered, rising from his chair. "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be at I thought you were." "Pinewood Manor?" I finished for him. I walked slowly to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table and sat down. "I heard they have excellent facilities for people who are burdens." "Arthur," Vanessa said, her voice sharp and commanding, "you need to leave. This is a private business transaction. You are not supposed to be here." I looked at her. I held her gaze until she looked away. "You are right, Vanessa," I said calmly. "This is a business transaction, and since it involves my property, I thought I should be present." "It is not your property anymore," Trevor said. His confidence was returning now. He had clearly rehearsed this moment in his head. "You signed power of attorney, Dad. You were in no condition to manage your affairs. I had to step in. I transferred the house to protect it. To protect you. To protect me," I repeated slowly. "By selling it to strangers and putting me in a government warehouse? The market is insane right now," Trevor continued, gesturing at the papers on the table. "This house is worth almost $4 million. But maintenance costs, property taxes, utilities, you cannot afford it on your pension. I am doing you a favor." "I see," I said. "And the $3.8 million from the sale? Where exactly is that going?" Trevor glanced at Vanessa. She gave him a tiny nod. "Into a trust," he said smoothly, "to pay for your care. Pinewood Manor is expensive, Dad. You do not realize how expensive, proper, long-term care is." "Pinewood Manor costs $1,800 a month," I said. I checked. At that rate, this sale would pay for 176 years of care. "That seems excessive, Trevor. Even I am not planning to live that long." The lawyer cleared his throat nervously. "Perhaps we should postpone until—" "No," Trevor snapped. "We are not postponing anything. The buyers are on their way. We close today." "Actually," I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out a folded document, "the buyers are not coming." "What are you talking about?" Vanessa demanded. "I called them this morning," I said. I introduced myself as Arthur Blackwood. I told them there was a title dispute on the property and advised them to walk away unless they wanted to be tied up in court for years. They were very understanding. Trevor's face went pale. "You did what?" I unfolded the document and slid it across the table. "This is a copy of my wife Margaret's will," I continued. "You remember her, Trevor. Your mother, the woman who built the foundation of everything we have." Everyone in the room stared at the document. "Margaret's will established the Blackwood Family Trust," I said. "That trust took ownership of the house 15 years ago. I am the sole trustee. You, Trevor, are a beneficiary, but only upon my death and only if certain conditions are met." I tapped the relevant paragraph with my finger. "Specifically, beneficiaries who attempt to remove the trustee through fraud or coercion are automatically disqualified from any inheritance." Trevor snatched the document and scanned it frantically. His hands were shaking. "The transfer you filed last week is void," I continued. "You signed as agent for Arthur Blackwood, the individual. But Arthur Blackwood, the individual, has not owned that house since 2010. The trust does, and trust assets cannot be transferred via a personal power of attorney." This is not possible," Trevor stuttered. "My lawyer said." "Your lawyer," I said coldly, "should have done a proper title search, but that would have taken time, wouldn't it? And you were in a hurry. You needed the money fast. The question is, Trevor, why did you need almost $4 million so urgently?" "I do not know what you are talking about," Trevor said, but his voice cracked. I pulled out another document. This one I had obtained from Christine just 2 hours ago. "This is a court filing from last month," I said. "A judgment against Blackwood Engineering Consultants for breach of contract. The plaintiff is a numbered company based in the Cayman Islands. The judgment is for $2.3 million. Trevor went white. "I did some digging," I continued. "That numbered company is a shell corporation controlled by your former business partner, Marcus Chen. The same Marcus Chen who convinced you to invest in that cryptocurrency mining operation 2 years ago. The one you never told me about. The one that collapsed." "Dad," Trevor whispered. His arrogance was gone. His confidence was gone. All that remained was the terrified child I remembered from decades ago. The boy who had broken a window playing baseball and tried to blame it on the neighbor's kids. "You borrowed money from Marcus to cover your losses," I said. "Then you lost that too. Now he has a judgment against your company, which means he can seize your assets, your cars, your condo, your bank accounts. Everything except the house," Vanessa finished. Her voice was hollow. She finally understood the trap. "The house that is not in Trevor's name," I said. "The house that is protected by a trust. The house you tried to steal so you could liquidate it before Marcus's lawyers could put a lien on anything." I stood up slowly, using the table for support. "You were not selling my house to pay for my care," I said. "You were selling my house to save yourselves. And you were willing to throw your own father into a warehouse to die to do it." Trevor slumped in his chair. Vanessa put her head in her hands. "But here is what you did not know," I continued. I walked toward the door. "Blackwood Engineering Consultants. The company you work for. The company with the judgment against it." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "I own it." Trevor's head snapped up. "What?" "When I retired, I did not sell my shares. I transferred them to a holding company. That holding company is controlled by the Blackwood Family Trust. I am the majority shareholder, Trevor. I have been your boss this entire time. You just never bothered to read the corporate filings." I opened the door. Christine was standing in the hallway, along with Detective Morrison and 2 uniformed officers. "I also own the mortgage on your condo," I added. "I bought it from the bank 6 months ago when you missed 3 payments. I have been your landlord since July." Trevor stood up, knocking his chair over. "Dad, wait, please. We can talk about this. I made a mistake. I was desperate. Marcus was threatening to destroy my reputation. I did not know what else to do. I looked at my son. I looked at the man I had raised, the boy I had taught to ride a bicycle, the teenager I had comforted through his first heartbreak, the young man I had walked down the aisle at his wedding. You called me a burden," I said quietly. "You said I was something you could not afford. You locked me out of my own house in the middle of winter, 3 hours after I had heart surgery. You left me standing in the snow with nothing but a hospital gown and a $20 bill. I stepped aside so the officers could enter the room. You wanted to throw me away like garbage," I said. "But you forgot something, Trevor. I built this city. I spent 50 years cleaning up messes and solving impossible problems. I am the man people call when everything is falling apart." Detective Morrison stepped forward, handcuffs ready. "I am not garbage, Trevor," I said. "I am the man who takes out the garbage." "Arthur, wait," Vanessa screamed as an officer took her arm. "This is a misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt you. We were going to give you some of the money. We were going to make sure you were comfortable." "Comfortable," I repeated. "Like Pinewood Manor, comfortable?" She had no answer. I watched as they put the handcuffs on my son. He did not resist. He just stood there with tears streaming down his face, looking at me like I was a stranger. And to me, he was. The legal proceedings took 4 months. Christine handled everything with surgical precision. Trevor was charged with fraud over $5,000, forgery, and financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. Vanessa was charged as an accessory. The judge was not sympathetic. He had seen too many cases like this, too many elderly parents stripped of everything by children who saw them as ATMs with expiration dates. Trevor received 3 years. Vanessa received 18 months. I did not attend the sentencing. I had already said everything I needed to say. Instead, I spent those months rebuilding. I moved back into my house after Christine secured a court order voiding the fraudulent transfer. I hired a new property manager for the rental units I owned through the trust. I restructured Blackwood Engineering Consultants, removing Trevor as an employee and installing a new CEO who actually understood the meaning of integrity. I also established the Margaret Blackwood Foundation. It provides legal assistance to elderly Canadians who are victims of financial abuse by family members. The irony is not lost on me. The money I had saved to leave Trevor as an inheritance now goes to protecting people from their own Trevors. 6 months after the sentencing, I was sitting on my back deck, watching the sun set over the Rockies. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold, the kind of Alberta sunset that makes you believe in something bigger than yourself. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. Incoming call. Drumheller Correctional Center. I let it ring. I watched the screen light up, flash, and go dark. A moment later, a notification appeared. 67 missed calls. 67 times my son had tried to reach me. 67 times I had let it go to voicemail. I did not block the number. That would have been emotional. Ignoring it was strategic. It told him that he simply did not exist in my world anymore. A week later, a letter arrived. It was written on prison stationery, the handwriting shaky and desperate. "Dear Dad," it began. "I hope this letter finds you well. I know you are angry. I know I messed up. But I have had time to think in here, Dad. I want you to know I am sorry. I should not have listened to Vanessa. She pushed me into it. I was scared. I was scared of losing everything. Can you please forgive me? I am your son. I am all you have left. Do you really want me to rot in here while you live alone in that big empty house? I know you started that foundation. I know you are giving money to strangers. Strangers, Dad. While your own son cannot even afford decent food in here. Please, just put some money on my commissary account. Just enough so I can live like a human being. I promise I will pay you back when I get out. We can start over. Don't you miss the holidays? Don't you miss having family? Who is going to take care of you when your heart gives out again? Because it will happen eventually, Dad. And when it does, you are going to need someone. You are going to need me. Love, Trevor. I read the letter once. Then I read it again. There was no remorse in those words. Not really. He blamed Vanessa. He blamed circumstances. He even tried to weaponize my heart condition against me, threatening me with the fear of dying alone. He did not miss me. He missed my money. He missed the safety net I had always provided. I walked to my home office and opened the filing cabinet where I kept important documents. I pulled out a folder labeled Closed Matters. Inside were the court judgments, the police reports, the newspaper clippings about the case. I slipped Trevor's letter inside and closed the folder. Then I went back to my deck and watched the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the mountains. I was not alone. I had Christine, who checked on me every week. I had the foundation, which gave me purpose. I had the young engineers at the new company, who looked at me with respect. I had a neighborhood full of people who waved when I walked past and asked how I was doing. I had a life. A real life. Not a life built on obligation and manipulation, but a life built on genuine connection. My phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Drumheller. I smiled and set the phone face down on the table. The sun was gone now, but the sky was still beautiful. Shades of purple and blue stretched toward the east, where the first stars were beginning to appear. I am Arthur Blackwood. I am 73 years old. I have a mechanical heart that beats 90 times a minute. I have a house full of memories. I have a foundation that helps people like me, and I have something my son will never understand. I have peace. They say blood is thicker than water, but blood can also poison you if it turns toxic. The hardest lesson I learned is that love does not mean tolerating abuse. Respect is not something you inherit. It is something you earn. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is close the door on the people who raised you to be stronger than they ever imagined. If you are an elderly person watching this, please remember, a power of attorney is a tool, not a gift. It should be given only to those who have proven their integrity through years of consistent action, not just words. Consult a lawyer before signing anything. Keep copies of all your documents in a place your family cannot access. And most importantly, never let anyone make you feel like a burden. You are not a burden. You are the foundation. And foundations do not apologize for bearing weight. If you believe that respect is more important than blood, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of justice. And I want to hear from you in the comments. If you were in my shoes, would you have read Trevor's letter, or would you have burned it unopened? Type read or burn below. Stay strong, and I will see you in the next story.